Hello, and thanks for joining me on another episode of Zulf Talks podcast, Working for Yourself. This podcast is powered by trustedcreators.org. I am Zulf. Hello, and thanks for joining me on today's show. We are live today with the podcast. We are available on all the usual places. You can check out zulftalks.com and listen back to the show, or even watch back because we are recording this. Today, the topic's a bit interesting. Is it okay to make changes? Pivoting in business, working for yourself. This is a touchy area because some people seem to think I've started my business, it needs to be exactly what I said it was. Sometimes during markets, things change. You might find something better. So you can actually look at a big area and slowly start focusing on individual items that you're more interested in because it can be interesting. In this episode, I will talk about how you can adapt your business and ensure you are always succeeding. My guest today will share how she experienced going from a freelancer into corporate to speaking, public speaker. And we'll put that into context. That means she was a receptionist early on and she became a founder, and then working in Nevada Army National Guard and a senior public speaking instructor. Lekky Ferry.
Thank you so much, Zulf. Exactly. That's a crazy journey. And I'm really thankful that I'm here today to talk about the reality, the truth, the challenges, and the blessings behind pivoting your business.
Yeah, definitely. So already I'm looking at that and I was very interested in your progression. So I'm hoping today with our audience we're going to share how we can easily adapt what we're doing and pivot, meaning doing different things realistically and then deciding what it is that works well for us. So I was already interested in the National Guard. What's that all about? Tell me what you did there.
Yeah, so I joined the Army National Guard, actually the transition between junior to senior year of high school. And at that point, I was determined to be in the medical field because that's what defined success for me and my family at that time. Even though I loved public speaking, even though I was a phenomenal writer, I always thought of it as a hobby and nothing more than that. So when I joined the Army National Guard, I was told by the recruiter that less than 1% of the US population goes into the military. And so I said, you know what? I want to be different and I want to be a part of that 1%, that elite one. So I joined, and my first job in the military was as a combat medic. That was the closest thing I could get to a legitimate medical profession at the time. And from there, I got injured, and that's a whole nother story. But it was such a pivotal moment in my military career. I had to choose between leaving the military and cutting that career short, or to change jobs or specialties and move on to something completely different from what I expected. So I went from combat medic to human resource specialist to eventually in my last specialization in the military as a public affairs mass communication specialist.
Wow. Okay, so you've done a nice, interesting journey there where you've covered that. I've kind of jumped ahead because I was just interested in how that came about. But before that, you pivoted quite a few times. So can you talk a little bit about the receptionist and how you went from a receptionist to working in the army? That's like a big jump.
Yeah, so I was actually working as a receptionist while I was in the training status. So as they call it RSP, which is Recruit Sustainment Program, and you have to drill every single month with your local armory, and you train there before you even ship out for basic training. So I was working as a front desk receptionist at a veterinary clinic because I loved animals. And that's kind of what I do is I find what I love and what my passions are, and I try my best to integrate it into my life in a very natural way. And so, yeah, I went from receptionist to the point where I decided I wanted to move to my active duty husband station, which was in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. So not only did I serve, I also served as a military spouse.
Okay. How did you find changing? And what's the main thing that you struggled with when you were making a change from one to the other?
The biggest change was being thrown into the unknown. I had no idea what to expect when I left for the military training. Obviously, I had 10 months of training before I even shipped out for basic, but that can only prepare you so much. You only get one weekend a month to really help you get ready for this life-changing circumstance. So I went from a very easy 9 to 5, you clock in, you play with the pets, you get people to the vet's office. And I decided I was going to leave Las Vegas, which was where I lived for over 15 years, and moved to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where I knew nobody except my husband. And that was a strain in of itself because as Army National Guard, my armory was here in Nevada and we have to drill every single month. So I would actually fly from Fort Campbell, Kentucky to Nevada every single month just to drill. And it was an intense experience going from a place where I knew nobody to a place where everybody is, and I could only see them for a weekend and then go back to my active duty station with my husband.
So looking back on that, do you think you made the right decision?
I absolutely believe I made the right decision because what I did while I was in the military was I was relentlessly looking for every single resource that I could use. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't take advantage of because they're not in the right place or the right time, or they don't ask the right questions. I have always been told that the quality of your life is directly correlated to the quality of your questions. So I made sure to reach out to all the resources I knew possible. I asked them the hard questions about where can I get free schooling? How can I get free certifications? Where can I find mentors? Are there entrepreneurship programs? And that's how I was able to create the background and the self-study I needed in order to pivot.
Okay, so that touches nicely onto the points because I had a quick note on our session today talking about pivoting in business. And the second point you've said without even knowing it. So, research is like an essential part of doing anything and making sure that it's the right choice for you. During that process, did you have in your mind that you want to work for yourself at some point, or were you happy working for someone?
So I have a very multicultural family that has two binary beliefs. The Filipino side of my family wants me to do something that's safe, stable, and reliable. They don't like risk because I came from, I'm
Safe, but then you
exactly.
joined the army.
Right. And they really enjoyed that because it was a medical profession. Like, oh, my
Yeah.
daughter is a medical professional in the US Army, So that kind of made up for it. And they kind of knew that in the guard, it's less likely that you're going to deploy. So that kind of gave them some reassurance, but not really. So as I was saying, um, can we go back to what you were saying? Because
Yes.
that kind of threw me off track. Sorry.
Sorry, I interrupted you because I got interested. I was like, you're in a safe career, but you end up
Yeah.
working in the army. And in the army, it's like very training related as well. So it's very interesting. So
Yes, the binary.
yeah. So the question was around, are you happy working for yourself at some point, or was that ever a plan? As in, you're working for companies,
Yes.
but were you wanting to work for yourself?
Yeah. Thank you. So, as I was saying, my family in the Philippines wanted something safe. And so they said, hey, work for somebody or work for a really great company or a hospital or, the sciences, basically. But my other half of the family is from Ghana, Africa, and they have a whole different set of beliefs. They're very entrepreneurial. They are go-getters. They pursue relentlessly. And so it was being surrounded by people who believed in themselves, who said, do what you put your mind to, because if you do what you love, the money will follow. And it also helped being in the military, where I was then surrounded by hundreds of people from all different walks of life, cultures, backgrounds, beliefs. And I came from a very conservative upbringing. So I was very sheltered, very closed-minded. And so that's one of the experiences I'm so grateful for being in the army, was being surrounded by people I never would have met, having conversations with them, the real conversations, and realizing that I can work for myself, not because at the time I didn't care about freedom per se. It was about going after my dreams. I've always wanted to be a writer growing up, but I was told it wasn't possible because you have to be another Harry Potter writer in order to be successful in that field. So I came to the idea of I want to write, but I want to figure out how I get paid for it. And so that's when I started looking at those free military resources and did my own research. And I learned about content marketing and professional SEO writing. And so I had to relearn how to write basically because like school writing and that kind of formal writing, it's not the same as conversational writing. It's two totally different conversations we're having. So I got free certification programs through a scholarship as a military spouse. I also did free internships and apprenticeships with marketing agencies. And I did that in my spare time and the time that I could find because, like I said, it takes a relentless amount of steps to get to the next level. And even when it looks like you're not making progress, you really are when you look back once you're ahead. And that's when I decided this is for me, this is my dream. And that was my first dream. And it's okay to pivot and I'll stop from there.
So during that, was it creative writing that you wanted to get into initially, or what was the original writing that you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I was thinking about creative writing, but for me, I had this tendency because I had to learn about my weaknesses throughout this self-discovery process. When I wrote a book, I very much had perfectionism really hold me back. And so I would write a couple chapters or I had a fantastic idea and then I would never finish it. And so I wanted to do something that was more practical, something that was going to be on demand and that the skills were needed in the current market. And that was content marketing and SEO writing. And so that's why I decided to go to more technical versus creative writing.
And how's that worked out for you?
So it was fantastic in the beginning because I was making a living out of my writing, which was something I was told was implausible. And so I was doing it for months and almost 2 years when I realized I was getting burnt out. And as a freelancer, the nature of our work is we go from one client to the next, one project to the other, and you don't really have consistency. You don't really get that relationship building that you get from like a team or from working with one client for a really long time. And so I was working with marketing agencies, with coaches, with solopreneurs from all stages of business. And I felt so scattered and my energy was just everywhere. And so I thought to myself, do I want to start an agency? Is that a natural next step for me? Or do I want to do something else entirely? And so a past version of myself would have looked at that idea of changing things up after I've already had such great momentum in my writing career, and I would have panicked. But instead, I realized, I'm going to get stuck again. That perfectionism, that imposter syndrome, that confusion. So I decided I'm going to get a corporate job and I'm just going to find something that's consistent and stable, like my parents told me to do, and see how that feels. And so I did get a professional writing job for a coaching company. And that lasted for maybe 5, 6, 7 months. And I said, I am done. I'm sure you can relate to this, Zulf, and a lot of people listening, where there was so much drama in the workplace. And it was not expected because this career or this company was supposed to be fun loving and very understanding. And it was all too good to be true. There was drama and politics. And I got so burnt out waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning to sometimes working past midnight trying to get these writing projects done. And I would communicate to my senior team, this is impossible. I can't write this much in such a short time frame and still be able to bring you the high quality content that I promised that I would bring and that I usually do bring to the table. But I had no more energy. I was getting burnt out. And at one point I said to myself, I have been telling everyone else's story, but I have my own, and I haven't been sharing that. And that's when I really started to tinker with the idea of pivoting once again.
So during that, when you decided to move from one to the other, what were you thinking? Did you do like an overhaul? Did you look at what you were doing? How did that look like? What was the process for you?
From freelancing to the
Yeah.
corporate career.
Yeah.
So with freelancing, I basically had to let all of my clients know, hey, I'm going to be pausing any projects. I'm finishing up things and tying the loop. And from there, I won't be taking on any new assignments. And so it really was just communication with them. It was talking to my husband, who has always been very supportive of my decisions. And even though he is the one who encouraged me to be a freelancer and to do business, when he realized I was burnt out and overwhelmed and thought that I could benefit from doing a 9 to 5, he was just as supportive. And so I took the tools that I learned as a freelancer and I brought it into that corporate career. And I started missing that freedom that we kind of touched on earlier, where I could determine when I would write, how much I would write, and I could just talk to my clients one on one and they would be a lot more available. But that wasn't the case. It was a whole different ball game, and it was a field that I no longer wanted to be in after that.
Okay. We're going to come back straight after this. You're listening to Zulf Talks, a podcast answering those questions we've all got in our minds, the day-to-day things we think about and the challenges we face. Be sure to reach out on social media if you have any questions about the topics we're speaking about today, and let's continue with the show. Thank you for joining me back. So we had a key moment here. I think it's worth reviewing where we've come to. So looking at this, pivoting is an essential part of what you're doing and where you want to go. There always will be times during your process where you're thinking, is it better if I do something else? You can actually move from working for yourself, working for a company, and sometimes perceptions, like our guest is saying today, it can be different. You can always see something from the outside when you get involved in it. In most places of work, there will always be challenging times, so it's difficult to get around that. I'm going to bring my guest back on and touch on this a bit further. So the reason I did a little bit of an intermission there is I wanted to think about what you said, because it's very interesting. When we're working for a company or we're working for ourselves, there will always be challenging times. Do you think, looking back on your progression where you got burnt out, was there something that could have helped you avoid getting burnt out?
I believe it would have been failing often, more often, I should say, and not getting so comfortable with where I was. So as a perfectionist, as someone who was raised in a very traditional Asian household, I was taught basically to fear rejection, to fear failure, and to avoid it as much as possible. Take the easy route. Why take the hard route, right? So when I was freelancing, I got myself into a routine, and that routine started to build up and snowball. And I started putting aside my dreams and what I really wanted to do for my life for the sake of comfort, for the sake of that routine. And the same thing happened. It just got worse, actually. When I went into corporate, I got really comfortable clocking in and clocking out, where I got paid the same amount every month. It didn't matter if I had 2 clients or if I had 15. And it was a similar workload every single week, but it was a lot of a workload. And there wasn't much options in terms of, hey, how can I communicate this as one human to another human being and say, I cannot do this right now because I'm just not at that capacity. And so writing could have been something I did for a while had I continued to suppress this feeling of, I want to speak. And it was really giving myself permission to dream again and to redefine what success meant for me that allowed me to say, you know what? I've spent half a decade in this writing career, but now I want to go into speaking. And that's kind of where it started, was having that mindset shift, finding mentors and examples of people who've done the same, who are like 5, 10, 100 steps ahead of me, and going to them for guidance and honesty.
Okay. So then, thinking about this process, if you're looking at yourselves at the moment and you're listening to this and you're thinking about, should you change careers? Is it easy to pivot? Sometimes pivoting can be basically going from a content creation role and narrowing down to maybe just audio or just video. Sometimes it might mean you're working in a of a field out, like a receptionist type situation, and you're moving totally to a new area, there will be times where things get challenging. You need to review what you're doing and see how you can maybe lighten the load. Exactly like you say today, you can look at reviewing it and then moving on to a new area. Do you think if you looked back on your life, you're happy how you moved and pivoted, or would you have preferred one over the other, that the decision you made?
I believe that every single step of this journey has somehow become the most convenient segue into where I am today. Everything that I've learned in content marketing and content writing has helped me become the person who I am today, where I can write differently, where I see myself differently. When I was working at the company as a professional writer, it was one that was focused on kind of the spiritual, what a lot of people might even consider the woo woo. And from there, I had learned to look at myself in a different light, to look at my visions and my dreams differently, to stop looking at my limitations and to start looking at the possibilities. But it's not just the daydreaming, because you can spend years of your life daydreaming and not do anything practical. But it's taking that inspired action, it's being intentional and doing everything that you can to learn, to rediscover, and to redefine until you're ready to take that next step and that big leap.
Okay, so if you were to look at these positions that you're doing now and what you're doing at the moment, it's always the case that what we learn throughout the steps tends to get us to where we are. So sometimes, even doing something in the past that wasn't excellent for you, you've got that life education from it and you've learned a few steps to move forward. If you were to plan to pivot again now from what you're doing, how easy do you think that would be for you?
I think it would be easier than it was before because I know that it's possible and because I have community. That's a big thing. It's not just about research, it's about community. It's about who you surround yourself with to remind you that it's possible through those challenges and those obstacles. So, for example, if I were to pivot into, instead of being a full-time speaker, being a full-time coach, I have the experience necessary to do so. But what I find is that it's not just about having the skills, it's about being ready mentally, spiritually, and emotionally to make that pivot. Because if you do it out of fear, or if you do it out of discomfort, if you do it out of disbelief, then you might backtrack instead of pivoting into something that's truly meant for you and it's going to help you grow.
So, in some of your speaking ventures now, what are you working on? What kind of projects are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I'm keynote speaking for a couple universities, for nonprofits. I have a community called the Speaker Squad where we bring difference making entrepreneurs together and I help them empower their voices by finding platforms and creating platforms for them to share their story and their message. I am also running a free virtual summit that's called Amplify Your Impact. It's free, but there's only like 100 seats that are left for that conference. And it's all online. It's where we are going to bring entrepreneurs and speakers together, bringing them the tools they need to become better storytellers, to grow their business in a way that's aligned and heart centered for them. And thank you so much for sharing that, Zulf. Yes, it's going to be from November 26th through the 27th. That's Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 4 p.m. PST.
Yes, so we are live at the moment. So if you're joining us, you can actually watch the screen. I just splashed up the screen there for the website. You can check in the show notes for the YouTube version of this podcast, or if you're on Spotify with video, you'll see the video. So I wanted to say thank you very much, Lekky Ferry. It's been amazing hearing your story, and I think it's good for our audience to hear around pivoting and how you explained that was very good. Is there anything else you'd like to add to today's show?
Yes, I would love to end it with a quote by Maya Angelou. Success is liking who you are, what you do, and how you do it. And it can always change.
You're listening to Zulf Talks, a podcast answering those questions we've all got in our minds, the day-to-day things we think about and the challenges we face. Be sure to reach out on social media if you have any questions about the topics we're speaking about today, and let's continue with the show.